Management in Urban Local Government. Myself, Dr. Anbu Aramugam, will be handling today's module for you. We have lined up very interesting information. Welcome to the MOOC course on Urban Local Governance. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's module. We will be discussing specifically on the various dimensions related to finances and financial regarding how finances are managed, how devolution is managed with regard to decentralization. It has been nearly 3 decades since the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, which was passed in 1992. This is specifically regarding the destructuring of municipalities and municipal bodies, which are very popularly referred to as ULBs or urban local bodies in short form. India's development is very much critical, and the contribution of municipal bodies with rapid urbanization is very, very important in that development. So, the health of municipal finances is a very, very critical component that any government cannot afford to miss. With that in mind, having set the context for today's class, let us discuss the various dimensions involved with finances in local government, specifically related to municipalities. The transfer of 3F, meaningly the funds, functions, and functionaries, has been not as desired as provided in the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992. If we discuss in general what are the various sources of finances for urban local bodies in India, if you look at it, property tax from various land buildings which are located within the municipal limit or the corporation limit are one source of finance for urban local bodies in India. The tax revenue other than property tax, such as taxes, fees, fines, earnings from municipal enterprises, also form major part of sources for the urban local bodies. The other important contribution are called as IGTs. Please remember this term. The dependence on urban local bodies on these intergovernmental transfers is very huge. In that sense, it's very important that these IGTs remain stable, whether they are from central government and whether they are from state government. Other than this, the grants which are provided by various and respective state governments also form a major source of finances for the urban local bodies which are located in India. Now, coming to the next slide, as you can see, we are going to discuss what are the various tax revenue sources for the urban local bodies in India. So, as we already discussed, property tax is one form. We also have water tax, then the sewerage tax, taxes on animals and vehicles is one form of tax. We also have entertainment tax and duties. Many western states in India actually collect a lot of octroi, which are nothing but items which are brought into the city. We also have education cess, and of course, as professionals, we all pay professional tax. These are the exact tax revenue items through which revenue is earned by urban local bodies in India. Now, what is the importance of tax revenue? This is very important to understand the positioning of the urban local bodies as to different categories of cities. So, we have class 1A cities, class 1B cities, and class C cities. So, we can divide the metropolitan cities into three types with regard to population. So, a city which has a population of over 50 lakhs can be classified as a class A city, and a city with a population of between roughly 10 lakhs to 50 lakhs can be classified as a class 1B city. And likewise, a smaller town, definitely in the range of 1 lakh to 10 lakh population, can be termed as a class 1C city. Now, what does this classification mean? How is this classification related to tax revenue? That is very, very important for students who are studying this course to understand. Why? Because primarily class 1A cities are better placed because of their population. they depend on tax revenue, and their tax revenue is definitely more compared to class 1B and class C cities. Because of the difference in population, class B and class C cities will have to rely on intergovernmental transfers. This means lack of autonomy and increased dependence on IGTs. So this is how the cities are run and managed with regard to tax revenue. Moving on, how do we empower urban local bodies with respect to financial management? As you can see, decentralization needs to be not only in terms of power, but fiscal decentralization. Fiscal strengthening is very, very important for any urban local body, no matter whether it is a class A city, class B city, or a class C city. Ultimately, the financial autonomy will make these urban local bodies the real contributors economically, socially to the benefit of our country. These small units of devolution with adequate power and financial resources and autonomy will start blossoming and contributing back to the Indian economy. That's the idea behind empowering urban local bodies. In that sense, some of the points which need to be taken care of are on your slide right now for your purview, for definitely better financial database. That's one of the utmost needs right now. In the changing age of technology and automation, data will give you better administration. Strengthening municipal revenue is another area that governments need to work on. The respective state governments also need to focus on increasing tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, and likewise strengthening those urban local bodies. Another important aspect of urban local bodies is informed citizenry. An active and diligent citizen participation makes the urban local bodies more humane, and these local bodies can then become units of autonomy with proper citizen participation. Ultimately, devolution and decentralization go hand in hand, and they are a vehicle, special purpose vehicle for the people of this country to participate in the political realm. And another important facet that we have not discussed so far is a grievance redressal mechanism. Ultimately, any good system of administration needs to have a proper grievance redressal mechanism. That is the beauty of administration, and urban local bodies are no exception here too. What about expenses? How do you manage your city? Now, when it comes to expenses, the operations and maintenance, we call this O&M in short form. It means operations on the one hand, M means maintenances. They are always on the rise. Expenses and maintaining a huge city comes to the responsibility of a city commissioner or a municipal commissioner in India. That is the system of administration that we have. But the resources for maintaining and operating a city are very, very high, and the resources need to be managed properly. In that sense, the O&M expenses need to be critically managed, the infrastructure needs to be managed, and service delivery in the city, in the municipalities, across all urban local bodies need to be managed properly. So this is what we mean by expenditure management. Any fiscal component not only includes resources, it also includes expenses and maintenance. So this is the other end of the spectrum that we need to understand when we study about finances in urban local bodies. Let's discuss the key issues. We have so far tried to understand the financial structure of urban local bodies in India. But before moving on, let's discuss some of the key issues in urban local bodies in India. So what are these issues that are not helping the actual development and proper delivery and maintenance and operational issues of these urban local bodies in India? First and foremost is autonomy. So do cities in India have the actual autonomy which was visualized in the 74th Amendment of Constitutional Amendment Act of 1992? Now, however, the strength of the Act and the constitutional provisions and further policy decisions by governments may sound good on paper, they need to be implemented for the betterment of the rapid urbanization that India is facing right now. We also have migration. On the one hand, urbanization has meant that we have a huge migratory population, which is also adding on to the existing city culture, the city dimension. So, city managers, whom we call as commissioners, the UPSC passed out administrative officials, the Public Service Commission passed out administration officials, they form part of the city managers. They are called the city managers. But without the necessary autonomy, managing a big city, whether it is a class 1 city, class 2 city, or a class 3 city, is going to be a tough task for these managers. The next point that we need to discuss further is to try to understand the taxation powers of these urban local bodies. Autonomy and fiscal autonomy is very important. When we talk about autonomy, we talk about administrative autonomy. On the other hand, administrative autonomy also needs to include fiscal autonomy. It's nothing but taxation powers. The urban local bodies not only provide services, they also have to manage, they also have to operate big cities, whether they are small, whether they are metro cities like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, or Chennai or Hyderabad. They have to be managed effectively. Tier 2 cities such as Pune, Mysore, Coimbatore, they all have to be managed effectively. But for that, you need resources. More specifically, not only administrative powers, not only administrative autonomy, but financial powers. Eventually, they mean taxation powers. So, the service that is provided by the city, for which we need better taxation powers to empower these urban local bodies, to empower these city managers to build better urbanized environment for everyone concerned. The third point in focus is that when you compare at the global level, at the international level, comparatively there is less fiscal autonomy for Indian urban local bodies. When you look at other countries such as United States, the United Kingdom, and some Southeast Asian countries such as Singapore, we can have a generalized observation that there is lesser fiscal autonomy. When we say fiscal autonomy, we talk about financial resource building, financial resource augmentation by these urban local bodies. So, that is another point that needs to be strengthened. We also have to focus on the capacity, enhancing the capacity of urban local bodies in order to raise revenue through their own source of revenue. This will ultimately have the proper desired effect of devolution, which was envisioned by the framers of the Constitutional Amendment Act in 1992. This will also mean that these urban local bodies are their own units of administration and they are lesser dependent on intergovernmental transfers. Now, this is an ideal situation, but can this be done? Is this possible? Definitely. Why not? Adequate fiscal autonomy, adequate taxation powers, and the enhancing the capacity of these urban local bodies to raise resources through their own revenue will have that kind of an effect. Now, GST has been a major source of revenue and it has definitely changed the fiscal dimension of our country for good. But the revenue losses due to the implementation of GST definitely has had a cascading effect on urban local bodies and the fiscal health of these urban local bodies. We also have to factor in the impact of the pandemic, which has been affecting us since 2020. It's been almost 3.5 years now since the advent of the pandemic. We are in the endemic stage now, but definitely the burden of the disease, though, has reduced. The impact, the economic impact, the cultural impact, the social impact of the COVID-19 pandemic definitely has had an effect on revenue loss with regard to urban local bodies. Why? Because as we saw in the previous slides, the major source of revenue for many of these urban local bodies were mostly tax revenue. Now, if you have lockdowns and if you have staggered lockdown also, the source of tax revenue will be coming down. So, the revenue loss in a cumulative effect due to the implementation of GST and also due to the effect of the global pandemic has been very heavy. I think many urban local bodies have been slowly and they've been struggling to come to a proper situation with regard to that. Last but not the least, one of the key issues of urban local bodies in India are the constraints in two fronts. One, how to expand your tax base. And the second one is to mobilize lesser institutional mechanisms. Now, these are some of the key issues of ULBs in India. Let us discuss what is the way forward. So, how do we move forward and ensure proper fiscal health? We talk about physical health, we talk about mental health, but there is another dimension to health that is called financial health or fiscal health. They can be used synonymously. Even for an individual, the financial health is very, very important. So, for an institution like an urban local body which takes care of all of us and which provides the infrastructure for all of us, the fiscal health, the financial health, more than the administrative health, is of great importance. In that sense, municipal finances are a very, very important part of urban local bodies and urban local governance in India. That is one of the reasons why we discussed this module as part of your curriculum in this course. So, one of the most important suggestions that we can have going forward is that to increase the revenue raising powers of these urban local bodies in India. Now, what will this have? What kind of an effect this will have on these ULBs is that they will become financially sustainable. They will also become empowered financially. So, this is a very important measure that can be suggested going forward. Another important aspect that needs to be taken care of in India by the central government and the respective state governments is to scale up finances of municipal bodies or the urban local bodies. At present, we can say that a lot of studies have showcased that the financing is very inadequate. There is an urgent need to look into the budgeting, they look into the policy development by the central government and the state governments to increase and to scale up municipal finance. This is another important point. Thirdly, the operations and maintenance expenses for any urban local body will keep increasing as we going forward. So, in order to provide better infrastructure in the cities, in order to provide better service in the cities, the resources need to match the operation and maintenance expenses for an urban local body. So, proper study and proper understanding of the vast expenditure that is required to maintain and manage a city by the city managers needs to be factored in going forward. And most importantly, we need to understand stable support is very, very essential for financial health of an urban local body or administrative health of an urban local body. But support from whom? Definitely from their respective state governments and the central government of India. It's very, very crucial for these urban local bodies to improve their own revenues in order to have a sustainable and properly functioning urban local body. Some of the key areas in fiscal management of urban local bodies in India needs to be better understood by the students learning this important course on urban local governance in India. As you can see, some of the areas are listed for your kind reference on the screen, but more importantly, it is very urgently necessary to contextualize the nature of issues that are being given to you. Number one, financial paucity. Very important to understand what is financial paucity. Any urban local government body in India needs to have the definite resources. Secondly, a method to augment resources. And thirdly, a proper fiscal mechanism to manage crisis. For example, the COVID pandemic. This kind of financial paucity will not enable urban local bodies for better financial management. This will have a trickle down effect on the management of cities and also operation and maintenance issues of the cities. Also, it will have an impact on the service delivery of any city manager. Secondly, the increased dependence, specifically, like we discussed previously, by the Tier 2 cities and Tier 3 cities, which have lesser population than the major Tier 1 cities or the metro cities. Their increased or sole dependence on intergovernmental transfers, or what we call as IGTs, is not good for the overall fiscal health of the urban local body. This again will have a trickle down effect on how the cities are run, how the cities are administered, and how the cities are financed, meaning the service delivery, the operation and management of any city, and the city infrastructure itself. Thirdly, revenue sharing between the central and state governments. Several finance commissions of India have repeatedly highlighted the necessity of financial devolution for these urban local bodies as well as other administrative units of India's local governance structure. Now, increasing the actual share in revenue and providing a stable financial structure, a stable financial platform for these fiscal bodies will also ensure adequate management of urban local bodies, which are becoming more of multicultural and shared spaces in India's urban landscape. We are also facing an important key issue, which is a major struggle for urban local bodies, which is unplanned urbanization. As India is growing faster, India's cities are also growing very, very faster. India's cities are also becoming very bigger to manage. In that sense, fiscal management becomes additionally important for these urban local bodies. Also, in any management structure, in any administrative structure of urban local bodies, or be it any administrative unit, multiplicity of agencies does not bode very well for any kind of management, not only fiscal management. So that is another key area that needs to be taken care of by the administration machinery in our country. We also have to understand that people's participation is not very desirable. All the cities are ultimately catering to the public, the population, the citizens, and the non citizens who are inhabiting various cities of our country. Now, very low level of participation by the actual beneficiaries, by the actual backbone of these urban local bodies, is also a major factor and a key area which does not go well with regard to fiscal management of urban local bodies in India. If we take a look at another important dimension when we were discussing the way forward and some of the key areas in urban local bodies with regard to financial management, we also need to understand how do we then empower the urban local governments. There are a few points that we will be discussing today in this module. Firstly, how can we make these urban local bodies financially independent, going beyond the IGTs or the intergovernmental transfers? One way is to go for proper fiscal decentralization. This was already envisioned in the Act, but definitely 3 decades after the 1992 Act, it is definitely time to reflect with regard to the state and the central governments on how to make the urban local bodies in India financially independent. So, one way is to go for decentralization, not only in terms of administrative powers, not only in terms of administrative devolution, but definitely financially too. Secondly, many finance commissions have talked about how to strengthen revenue for these municipal bodies. Revenue is the fiscal lifeline for any administrative unit, not only the urban local bodies in India. For example, the 12th Finance Commission of India talked about digitization of records. As we can see today, you can get your birth certificate, you can get your death certificate, a marriage certificate, many certificates online. You can apply online, you can renew them online. The e-Seva centers have made a lot of services digitally which are offered to the citizens, to offer to the people who are living in the cities, which is a huge jump compared to 10 years back or 15 years back. So this was one of the major recommendations of the 12th Finance Commission. The 13th Finance Commission on its part spoke about the establishment or the envisioning of a state property tax board, which is a dedicated, independent, and autonomous body, a type of organization which will help in developing a property tax structure, restructuring the established structure, and so on and so forth. So, the 13th Finance Commission, on its part, when talking about strengthening municipal revenue, they came out with this suggestion. The 14th Finance Commission went one step further and it talked about vacant land tax. It's a very interesting form of revenue which will actually go further in strengthening municipal revenue. Third point in empowering urban local governments in India is to go for transparency in terms of maintenance of accounts, in terms of social audit, in terms of bringing out green audit. We talk about sustainable development goals and how to manage the cities. We have 17 goals, so on and so forth. We are looking at transforming and converging, the national policies and the state policies in achieving the transformational agenda by 2030. Therefore, the 13th and the 14th Finance Commission definitely suggested for better data availability as a conditionality in order for all these urban local bodies to apply for any type of grants from the state governments or the central governments. Now, this was one of the major recommendations by India's topmost body, which provides advices and guidance on finances, which is the Finance Commission, which is a constitutional body. So it talked about bringing in transparency in administration. It talked about bringing in transparency in accounts and management. Going forward, few more points which can help us to enable and empower urban local bodies in India is to create decentralized platforms of management. Now that could be for administration, that also could be for finances. Another important aspect is to facilitate discussions and deliberations between the elected representatives who actually run the administrative unit of the urban local bodies, along with the city managers who are nothing but the administrative officials or the executive, with the citizens. Now, this is a continuum. So, you have the legislative representative who's sitting with you. You also have the executive representative who's sitting with you, and the ultimate, inhabitant, beneficiary, and the most important component of any urban local body is the citizen. Now, this kind of deliberations, this kind of a platform will help to empower and make the urban local body a lively unit of healthy development model, which is what we want in India. Finally, one of the most important aspects is to develop technology-enabled platforms. Today, artificial intelligence has penetrated the entire world, and the administrative machinery is not exempt to that kind of a penetration. Now, how do we embrace technology? How do we enable technology to empower urban local bodies? So, for grievance redressal mechanism definitely is one area in which technology can be used in order to enhance and strengthen the urban local bodies for better service delivery and operations and maintenance. Some questions and answers to test your knowledge and how you have captured the module that we discussed today. Today we discussed about finances in urban local government, and I have designed a few questions for the kind reference of viewers and students of this course. So the first question for today will be: local self-government can be best explained as an exercise. The options are federalism, B, democratic decentralization, C, administrative delegation, D, direct democracy. So you'll find the answer soon. I hope you'll be able to work on this. The next question for today's module on finances in urban local government is to understand the fundamental object of the Panchayat Raj system or the urban local system is to ensure which among the following. You have four options. Option 1, people's participation in development. Option 2, political accountability. Option 3, democratic decentralization. Option 4, financial mobilization. Now you are given four options. So you'll have to select the correct answer using the combination of statements. So I hope you'll be able to work on this. Thank you very much.